Thanks for having me, Rob. Appreciate it. It's a good first segment. Enjoyed talking Bills with Matt Harvey.
Well, always remember, you own the place. You can come in and co-host any day you demand to. You could even host any day
I
you
have
wanted to.
never demanded to, ever. I've usually been begged or dragged in here kicking and screaming.
Cajoled into. Also, Matt Harvey, Jefferson County prosecuting attorney. Good to see you, sir. Thank you for the content in the first segment.
Yeah, absolutely enjoyed talking about it and getting the information out there to the citizens, and proud of the accomplishment and proud of our local delegation for all their hard work.
And a member of that local delegation includes Senator Jason Barrett, who is the Senate Finance Chair. He joins us via telephone. Jason, good morning to you.
Good morning, gentlemen. Mike?
It's starting off like that.
Here we
All
go. It's going to be a good 20 minutes. It's a sprint to the finish line. JB, before we get going here, I got Phil's perspective on this as a Steeler fan. Your perspective on the George Pickens trade.
Well, he's a drama queen, as all Steelers fans know. Rob, as you know, the Steelers typically, when they're going to have a free agent come up in the next year, they try to sign a long-term deal the year before they become a free agent. So I think it makes sense if you're not going to sign that person. I don't think there's much chance of winning a Super Bowl this year. So I think it was good to get rid of Pickens while they could get something for him. Now, I thought he was valued more a second-round pick than a third-round pick, but there's a reason I'm not a NFL general manager. So
what we needed was the Chicago Bears to need another wide receiver. They gave us a second for Chase Claypool.
Yeah, exactly. They're. I think the Steelers have taken advantage of the Bears a few times in trades. Not that they've done a heck of a lot with it, but I'm hoping that next year's draft they can draft one of the top quarterbacks. So their team is certainly set up at this point to ensure a top 10 pick. So
yeah, they have. I like the way you put that. They have 12 picks set up for next year right now. Jason, first and foremost, thank you for your weekly appearances during the legislative session as the Senate Finance Chair. I know finding a 20-minute slice of your time every week wasn't easy, but I appreciate you doing it. Very kind of you.
Happy to do it. And there was Wednesday was really the best day for me, so I appreciate you being able to accommodate that time right for me. So.
We bend our schedule around those who help. Mr. Hornby as well. I think you made just about every one of your Tuesdays or Thursdays, depending on which day you'd be available. So I appreciate your time, too.
Always a pleasure.
Yeah. Jason, what was it like working with this Hornby guy, the House Caucus Chairman, as the Senate Finance Chairman? I know the two of you all, of course, had a personal relationship as well.
You know, it's always good, and it's really good to have someone from the Eastern Panhandle as the caucus chair over in the House, or at least someone that I have a good relationship. And so in this case, it was both. And the previous caucus chair in the House was Clay Riley, who I have a really good relationship with now. He's now the House Vice Chair of Finance. So that helped as well with my relationship with working with leadership in the Finance Committee in the House to get the budget worked out, get some other bills agreed to. So it was a great session in my view, at least from my perspective as being in first year as a finance chairman and being able to work with not only our caucus and our committee, but our counterparts in the House as well.
I want to ask the both of you, because I need this explained to me. I don't understand it. Okay. So Jason out of the Senate, Mike out of the House. You folks obviously worked on a vaccination bill at one point along the way, and Governor Morrissey also had an executive order regarding a vaccination bill. And then we saw that there was some confusion late last week, early this week, in regards to the executive order versus what the legislation was or didn't pass in terms of the implementation of that. So when the governor issued his executive order, did that hold despite the fact that the legislature did not pass a bill? And if the governor's executive order rules, then why did you guys even need to work on a vaccination bill? Who wants to take that one first?
I mean, I could try, and Jason could correct me if I'm wrong. So the reason the legislature took up the vaccination bill was to codify the governor's executive order, because an executive order can be overridden by another executive order. Jason?
That's exactly right. And an executive order could also be subject to a court challenge where, it'd be much more difficult to do that for a law. As long as the law is not unconstitutional, it's really hard to challenge any statute that the legislature would pass. So We were looking to, there are only 5 states without religious exemptions for vaccines. We were looking to reduce that number to 4 and join the other 45 states that has a vaccine exemption. Just couldn't get the bill across the finish line. There's been times in the past where there's overwhelming support in the House and the Senate didn't quite have the votes, and this year it was the opposite. So, I don't expect it to be an issue that goes away anytime soon.
No, this is going to end up in litigation. I'm hearing that.
What do you hear, Matt?
That some religious schools are going to deny admittance for non-vaccinated students. Is that what you're hearing too, Jason?
I have not heard that, no.
And this executive order mandated that private schools also follow the executive order. And does the executive order include philosophical objections or just religious?
I'm not, and I don't have the executive order in front of me. I'm not sure that would. I wasn't under the impression that the executive order applied to the religious schools as well, the private schools as well. Maybe it does. That was one of the things that in the Senate bill it did apply. All the exemptions applied to private schools.
Well, I could be wrong. Absolutely.
Okay, very good.
But it didn't help that the superintendent came out and sent a letter out to everybody saying they're going to ignore it, and the governor had to come back and say, no, we're not going to ignore it. We're going to implement it.
And that was Michelle Black?
Yeah.
Do you think that was, I mean, I don't think that was her policy decision. Do you think that's what she thought she was obligated to do under the law? Or do you think it was a policy decision?
I think she was issuing a statement based on the fact that the bill failed in the House, and she had to issue some kind of statement because we didn't know if it was the executive order was going to be challenged. So she was, putting something out there, and then she later corrected herself and said, "Hey."
Well, they seem to be working on some sort of solution between the governor's office and her office. So that's good news.
And as the superintendent, she clearly answers to the State Board of Education. So we don't know, or at least I don't know, kind of the behind the scenes, how much direction she received from her board on that statement or not.
Jason, tell me about this town hall meeting you attended.
So on Monday, we had a town hall meeting in Charlestown. So those that the legislators that represent a portion or all of Jefferson County were invited. Joe Funkhauser is really the one that kind of spearheaded getting this town hall put together. So those that decided to attend were Delegate Joe Funkhauser, Delegate Wayne Clark, Delegate Bill Rednauer, Senator Rucker, and I. And so we had well over a 2-hour town hall with what I would say to be well over 100 people, maybe as many as 125 people showed up from the community. There were a couple of residents from Berkeley County, but primarily they were from Jefferson County. And we each gave a 3 to 4 minute opening statement about things that we'd worked on in the legislature, things that we were pleased with, things that we had some disappointment about. And then we opened it up for really the next hour and a half plus for the citizens there that came out to participate, to allow them to ask questions of each of us or any of us there. And some of the questions were directed specifically to each of us, and some of them were just broad questions for each of us to answer. So really, as expected, the top couple of questions were centered around the water bottling plant that is proposed in the Middleway area, and as well as House Bill 2014, the microgrid bill. And I'll tell you that even though all of the legislators that represent Jefferson County are Republicans, there was a wide range of voters there from the political spectrum. I mean, there were very clearly, as you could always mostly tell when the question is asked, what the party affiliation or ideology is of the person asking. And so there were, I think, certainly a lot of folks on both sides of the aisle that attended the forum.
What were the primary issues, Jason, that were brought up during the course of this from the 120 plus who were there? What were the biggest concerns they had?
Well, the water bottling.
I know you mentioned that one already, but I'm sorry.
I would put that one at 1 and the microgrid at 2. Certainly PEIA, there was questions about foster care, whether or not Medicaid was fully funded, the $400 million budget gap that the governor talked about in his State of the State, and this was just at the beginning of May, so the April numbers were out. So a lot of these folks were aware of the $237 million surplus that we are currently running through this fiscal year. So they heard that, and then they wanted to understand how that contrasts with the $400 million deficit or gap that the governor talked about a few months ago.
Can you go into detail on that just a little more, Jason, and explain to people? Because I do have a hard time explaining to my constituents. Yes,
Sure.
we've got a $230 million surplus right now. The governor's talking about a $400 million deficit. I know we're working on right now is Jim Justice's kind of numbers that we're working on. How does this look moving forward? And how much of that discussion did you have with Vern and everybody else?
Well, I think when you look at the $400 million gap that the governor talked about in the State of the State, that was for fiscal year 26, which that's the budget we just passed that will take effect July 1 of 2025. And so the governor identified spends that the legislature has made in the past, compared that to the revenue estimates that he set, working with the budget office, and when they set the revenue estimates, and they went back and looked at all the expenses that we had, and that's how they came up with that projected $400 million gap. And that was if we took no action and did nothing. Now, the $237 million surplus is actually fiscal year 25 that we are currently in, that ends June 30th.
Did we take that into account when making the new budget for 26?
No, because that surplus at that time is really not realized until June 30th. I mean, we are running a surplus, but anything can happen. We could end up at zero. So you take no consideration of that moving forward. Now, we did use some unappropriated money from the 25 budget. We left, I believe, $80 couple million on the table in the 25 budget that we didn't spend, and we directed that to the 26 budget. And so there was some one-time money used in the budget, which is done every year. And so that's when the governor talks about structural deficits moving forward. That's what he's talking about, is the historically of using one-time money. Now, there is always some one-time money there. There's always excess lottery money available.
Especially when we have a surplus, right?
There's always some type of surplus somewhere. That at least historically, that we've been able to use that money. So that's kind of, the easiest explanation is the large surplus is in the 25 budget. The large projected deficits moving forward are in the out years. Now, just so everyone is clear, the budget that we did pass for fiscal year 26 is completely balanced. And in fact, there is an additional $33 million that was really sent to the personal income tax reduction fund, which would have been excess or surplus money. There's also a $5 million unappropriated. So there's really $38 million that is essentially not going to be spent out of our projected budget for fiscal year 26. So, one of the things that I always say, and that I always want to make clear, at least is my opinion, is that the budget office gave us a 6-year plan, and I give the governor credit for his staff doing that, because the previous governor really didn't do that, and the request of the legislature was there numerous times to do that. But when you look at those revenue estimates in the 6-year plan, I look at them as being very conservative, which is fine. It's not a criticism, but it's also, folks need to understand that our historic budget increase, or the amount that we collect every year, the natural growth in our state's economy, is typically in our budget is typically about 3% a year. In the 6-year plan that was just put out, in no year in those 6 years do we reach that or hit that projection of 3% growth. So that's why I think it's very conservative. Most of those years are right around 1% or just above 1%, and I think only one of the 6 is above 2%. So, I think we're going to be on solid financial footing moving forward in the next several years.
So hypothetically, let's say we finish with a $250 million surplus at June 30th. Governor could call us into special session later in the year. That means there is a $250 million unappropriated money that could be spent to fix some kind of issue. Is that simplified?
We could run supplementals to spend that.
Yeah.
We could use that to fill, when we work on next year's budget, we could use that to fill any projected gap at that point. $100 million of it is in the general revenue surplus section of the budget, which is dedicated to the road fund. Then there's directive language within that surplus section spending to use that for road maintenance. There's an increase in spending authority, about $100 million for road maintenance.
Is the percentage of that have to be put towards the rainy day fund?
There is. We changed that a couple of years ago. That there was some portion that has to go to the rainy day fund, but that's provided that our rainy day fund isn't at a certain percentage of what our actual general revenue budget is. What could happen because of the downturn, if the stock market takes a downturn, and then our assets in that rainy day fund go down, and then they don't meet that threshold that's required of the general revenue budget, at that point that could trigger some of that surplus to have to go to rainy day.
Does the interest accrued in the rainy day funds stay in the rainy day funds?
Yes. Okay. Both in A and B.
Senator Jason Barrett, Finance Chair, our guest here on the program. You got heckled by your wife, by the way, in our comments section because she said every year you predict the Steelers are going to win the Super Bowl, but this year you've already given up on them.
That's how bad their team is right now. That's how bad their team is.
All right. Hey, I'm with you. I'm a fan as well. There was when the personal income tax cut was passed with the triggering mechanism, there was, I think, $400 million set aside to cover for a potential shortfall as a result of the trigger. Is that money still set aside, and what is it doing right now, Mike or Jason?
It is still in the personal income tax reduction fund. There was money in there before that $400 million transfer. That was during session. It was around 460. In our budget bill, we put $33 million in our budget bill into that personal income tax reduction fund. What that fund? That's not a new fund that was set up when we did the personal income tax cut. That fund was there for really cash flow when people start to file tax returns. And if there was money short to being able to give people their refund, then this fund was able to was utilized to be able to make those payments. And so that's why the money was just put in that particular fund. So now it will be, once that $33 million amount goes in there, we're roughly at $500 million in that personal income tax reduction fund.
But that does not get counted toward the state surplus at the end of the year.
That's right.
That's treated more like a rainy day fund for a specific cash flow purpose.
For taxes.
Right.
Yeah.
Now,
Or it's there in case, there are, when the triggers hit, that we, have a reduction in personal income tax, and that creates some type of cash flow problem at that time. That's why that additional $400 million was put in there. It's also there, to help with that situation when, in the first year that we have a personal income tax reduction that's triggered, that we have substantial money in there in case there's a problem. And that was the reason to put the additional $33 million into that fund, which was a proposal by the Senate's budget.
if you came up $100 million short on revenues this year, would that $100 million come out of that fund, or would it come out of the rainy day fund?
That would be a decision by the legislature, and working with the governor. There could be budget cuts. There mid-year cuts. There could be the legislature could take money out of rainy day A. The legislature could take money out of the personal income tax reduction fund. Could have legislation to do either of those things. I don't see any scenario where that happens.
Will there be an additional state income tax cut this year?
I don't believe so. I don't think that we're going to hit those triggers. But
I thought we'd push that out to 2026 anyway, Jason.
Well, it now takes place at a different time of year. Yes.
Okay.
Because of if there were the way that it worked is that the cut came mid-year, and it was hard to project when you were doing your budget in April and May, or April really, of when that was, if that was going to trigger it. How do you take into consideration for that?
I have a question about PEI. I've heard the governor say that he wants to have a special session on PEI. So my understanding is that it's by code 80-20 split.
That's right.
What And it's also my understanding that it's fully funded on the legislative side.
That's right.
So what kind of, I'm just curious of what kind of work that the legislature could do during a special session on PEIA. Would that be shifting the numbers of the funding mechanism, or
to be honest, I think it's got to be changes to the plan. And
Okay.
I think that, whether you look at things that, should we set an individual premium at, what is based on their salary? Should it be based on their individual risk? Now, the plan in general is set by risk, but the individual's the individual's premium is set by their salary, and so it could be things like that. And and we heard that a lot, the PEIA conversation a lot in the town hall meeting on Monday, and I hear it all the time about, when are you going to fix PEIA? Well, tell me what's wrong with it. And I'm not saying that it doesn't have issues, but when people say, well, the premiums are going up, well, if we're holding PEIA at a standard for insurance that the premium never goes up, we're only fooling ourselves, because no other insurance company is held to that, or insurance policy is held to that standard. Now, I want to do everything we can to give the best coverage we can to state employees, to keep those premiums as low as possible. But at the same time, we have to have realistic expectations. When you compare an insurance plan in the market, out the private sector, they will not compete with this PEIA plan, not on coverage and not on premium. Now, you may get one with better coverage, but the premium is going to be a lot higher, or vice versa.
is the reimbursable on PEIA, was it addressed a few years ago?
It was. It's now 110% of the Medicaid rate. And there was a hospital in the northern Panhandle that said, look, the reimbursement's so low, we're losing money, we're no longer going to take PEIA. And there had been
it used to be 50% of Medicaid.
Go ahead.
I said it used to be 50% of Medicaid.
Yeah, it was higher than that when we raised it. It was in the 70s, 80s, off the top of my head. But it is now 110% of Medicaid.
So that makes it more attractive to providers to accept PEIA.
It does, yes.
And
so that's, and that's kind of what has driven up the state's share of the cost of PEIA, is that we're now going to reimburse more. So that ultimately comes back on the employer, not the employee. The employee is still going to pay, that 20%. And what happened for a number of years, specifically with the former governor, who did not want PEIA premium increases at all. And so really at that time, the split was more like 90-10, 92-8 of the employer portion compared to the employee portion. And the law said 80-20, but we were, putting money in that PEIA reserve fund, which then allowed to keep those premiums low. And then it was last year, the year before, we came back and went back to the 80-20, which is where it ought to be. It was completely unsolvent.
And if it had been raised on a yearly rate, Jason, it would have been tiny little raises to the rate.
That's right.
But it was held stagnant for 8 years, I believe.
Yeah, and so then you got to come back and you have to, have a significant. I think it hadn't been raised in 11 or 12 years.
Yeah.
And if we'd have done it, if the previous governor would have just allowed that to go up, it would have been essentially about a 2% increase per year.
Yeah.
Jason, I'm out of time here. Appreciate yours, and got a text from my friend Kathy that said that the gate at the Eastern Regional Jail still has not been repaired. So
Okay.
I know we talked about that a few months ago, but just put that in front of you again. Thank you.
All right, sounds good. Thanks, guys. Take care.